In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless velvet canvas, humanity had finally reached beyond its cradle. The year was 2347, and Earth's reach had stretched to distant galaxies, forging alliances with civilizations both wondrous and strange. Among these was a realm known as Lyria, a planet bathed in perpetual twilight, where twin suns cast shifting hues of violet and gold over landscapes that defied imagination. It was here, on this alien world, that Captain Elias Drake found himself standing at the precipice of destiny. Elias was no ordinary man. He was a decorated officer of the Interstellar Exploration Corps, renowned for his courage and unyielding resolve. His ship, the Aurora, had been dispatched on what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic mission. But nothing about Lyria could ever be described as routine. The planet's atmosphere crackled with energy, its air thick with scents that were neither floral nor metallic but something entirely otherworldly. Towering crystalline structures rose from the ground like frozen lightning bolts, their surfaces refracting light into dazzling rainbows. And then there were the inhabitants, the Lyrians, beings whose beauty transcended human comprehension. They moved with an ethereal grace, their skin shimmering faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted depending on their emotions. Their eyes glowed softly, orbs of liquid silver or deep emerald, betraying thoughts too complex for mere words. Yet it wasn't just their appearance that set them apart, it was their aura, a palpable sense of power and mystery that made even seasoned explorers feel small in comparison. Captain Drake had arrived with a team of scientists, linguists, and engineers, all eager to learn more about this enigmatic civilization. Diplomatic protocols dictated caution, respect, and restraint. But Elias couldn't shake the feeling that fate had brought him here for reasons far greater than interstellar diplomacy. As he stepped out of the landing pod, clad in his formal uniform adorned with medals earned through years of service, he felt the weight of countless possibilities pressing down upon him. Little did he know, one encounter would alter not only his life but perhaps the course of two worlds forever intertwined by forces unseen. The royal palace of Lyria loomed before Elias, a structure so magnificent it seemed plucked straight from myth. Its spires spiraled upward, catching the dim light of the twin suns and scattering it in cascading waves of color. Guards lined the entrance, their towering forms clad in armor that pulsed faintly with an inner glow. They regarded the human delegation with expressions unreadable, their luminous eyes betraying neither hostility nor welcome. Elias took a deep breath, steeling himself as he led his team forward. Every step echoed against the crystalline floor, each sound reverberating like a heartbeat in the cavernous hall. At the end of the corridor stood the throne room, its doors carved from translucent stone that shimmered with veins of liquid gold. As they approached, the doors parted silently, revealing a chamber unlike anything Elias had ever seen. The walls were alive, shifting and swirling with patterns that seemed to breathe. At the center sat the queen, her presence commanding yet serene. She was breathtaking, not merely beautiful, but radiant in a way that transcended physical form. Her hair flowed around her like living starlight, strands of silver and gold weaving together in impossible patterns. Her gown shimmered with colors that defied description, shifting with every subtle movement she made. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the room, rich and melodic, carrying an authority that silenced all else. "You are Elias Drake," she said, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "Leader of the humans who dare tread upon my world." Her tone held no malice, only curiosity, and something deeper, something Elias couldn't quite place. Around her, courtiers stood silent, their glowing eyes fixed intently on the exchange. The tension in the air was palpable, as though the very fabric of reality hung suspended in anticipation of what might come next. Elias bowed deeply, his training kicking in despite the overwhelming awe coursing through him. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady but tinged with reverence. "We come in peace, seeking understanding between our peoples." The queen tilted her head slightly, studying him as if peeling back layers of his soul. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause, the universe holding its breath as two vastly different beings stood face to face, bound by curiosity and the unknown. As the silence stretched, Elias became acutely aware of the weight of the queen's scrutiny. Her piercing gaze seemed to pierce through his very essence, leaving him feeling both exposed and strangely understood. Finally, she rose from her throne, her movements fluid and graceful, each step echoing softly against the crystalline floor. The courtiers around her stirred slightly, their glowing eyes flickering with anticipation, yet none dared to speak. The queen approached Elias, her presence enveloping him like a warm, electric embrace. She stopped mere inches away, her luminous eyes searching his own with an intensity that left him momentarily breathless. "You intrigue me, human," she murmured, her voice a symphony of soft tones and hidden depths. "Few have ventured this far into my domain. Fewer still have stood before me with such resolve." Her hand lifted slowly, hovering near his cheek without touching it, as if testing the boundaries of some invisible barrier. Elias fought the urge to flinch, his heart pounding in his chest. He had faced danger countless times in his career, but this was something entirely different. It wasn't fear that gripped him now, but a profound awareness of the chasm between their worlds, and yet, an inexplicable connection that defied logic. The queen's expression softened, her lips curving into a faint smile that carried both warmth and a hint of mischief. "Tell me, Elias Drake," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to resonate within him, "what drives you to seek alliance with those so unlike yourself?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, as if she already knew the answer but sought to hear it spoken aloud. Elias swallowed hard, his mind racing to find the right response. In that moment, surrounded by the opulent grandeur of her court and the sheer magnetism of her presence, he realized how fragile the line between diplomacy and vulnerability truly was. Elias hesitated, his thoughts swirling like a storm. How could he articulate the motivations that had driven him across the stars? Was it duty, ambition, or something deeper, an insatiable hunger for discovery that gnawed at his very core? Before he could answer, the queen leaned closer, her shimmering form casting a soft glow that illuminated the tension etched into his features. Her gaze bore into him, unrelenting yet oddly tender, as though she saw not just the man before her, but the echoes of every decision, triumph, and failure that had shaped him. "You carry burdens," she said softly, her voice threading through the silence like a melody. "I see them in your eyes, in the way your shoulders bear the weight of responsibilities others cannot comprehend." Her words struck a chord deep within him, unraveling defenses he hadn't realized he'd erected. "But tell me," she pressed, her tone sharpening ever so slightly, "do you seek alliance because you believe it is right, or because you crave absolution?" The question caught him off guard, slicing through his carefully constructed facade. Absolution. The word lingered in the air, heavy and unfamiliar. He had always prided himself on being a man of action, guided by logic and purpose. Yet now, under her piercing gaze, he felt stripped bare, confronted with truths he had long buried beneath layers of duty and discipline. Did he seek redemption for past failures? Or was it something more primal, a yearning to bridge the chasm between worlds, to prove that connection was possible even amidst vast differences? Before he could respond, the queen's expression shifted, her luminous eyes darkening with an emotion he couldn't name. "No other male has dared to touch me," she whispered, her voice low and resonant, carrying a weight that seemed to press against his very soul. The courtiers around them stirred faintly, their glowing gazes flickering with shock or perhaps envy. Elias felt the blood rush to his face, his pulse quickening as her words sank in. She extended a hand, her fingers brushing lightly against his arm, sending a jolt of electricity coursing through him. "Human," she continued, her voice trembling with a mix of defiance and vulnerability, "now I belong to you." Her declaration hung in the air, a seismic shift that rippled through the chamber. The courtiers gasped audibly, their glowing forms flickering in unison as if reacting to the gravity of her words. Elias froze, his mind reeling. What had just transpired? Had she claimed him, or had she surrendered herself? The implications were staggering, a tangled web of cultural significance and personal stakes he couldn't begin to unravel. All he knew was that in that moment, everything had changed, and there was no turning back. The Queen's proclamation sent ripples through the court, her words igniting a maelstrom of reactions among her subjects. Some of the courtiers exchanged uneasy glances, their glowing eyes flickering with apprehension, while others bowed their heads in silent deference, as if acknowledging the gravity of what had just occurred. A murmur spread through the chamber, a low hum of voices blending with the ambient energy of the room. It was clear that the Queen's decision was unprecedented, a deviation from tradition that carried consequences neither Elias nor the Lyrians could fully grasp. For Elias, the weight of her words settled heavily upon him. He had come to Lyria as a diplomat, a representative of humanity tasked with fostering understanding between two vastly different civilizations. Yet now, he found himself thrust into a role he had never anticipated, one that blurred the lines between ambassador and consort. The Queen's declaration had transformed him from an outsider into something far more intimate, binding him to her and, by extension, to her people. The enormity of this responsibility pressed down on him, mingling with a lingering disbelief that such a thing was even possible. He glanced at his team, who stood frozen in stunned silence. Their faces mirrored his own confusion, though he could see the beginnings of concern etched into their expressions. This was uncharted territory, a situation no amount of training or preparation could have equipped them for. The diplomatic protocols they had painstakingly studied suddenly felt woefully inadequate in the face of the Queen's bold assertion. What did it mean to belong to her? Was it a bond of loyalty, a pledge of protection, or something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of species and culture? The Queen, meanwhile, remained poised and regal, her luminous eyes fixed unwaveringly on Elias. There was no hesitation in her demeanor, only a quiet certainty that suggested she had already foreseen this moment. Her earlier vulnerability had given way to a steely resolve, as if she had made a choice that could not be undone. Yet beneath her composed exterior, Elias detected a flicker of something else, hope, perhaps, or a longing that mirrored his own uncertainty. Whatever her reasons, she had tethered herself to him, and in doing so, she had irrevocably altered the course of their interaction. As the murmurs in the chamber subsided, the Queen raised a hand, silencing her court with a single gesture. She turned her attention back to Elias, her voice cutting through the charged atmosphere like a blade. "This changes nothing, and everything," she said, her words layered with meaning. "You sought alliance. Now you have it, but not in the way you imagined." Her gaze bore into him, daring him to question, to resist, to retreat. But Elias knew there was no going back. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, misunderstandings, and risks that could jeopardize not only his mission but the fragile peace between their worlds. And yet, as he met her unwavering stare, he felt a spark of determination ignite within him. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it, not just for himself, but for the future of both their peoples. The days that followed were a blur of ceremonies and rituals, each steeped in the ancient traditions of Lyria. Elias found himself immersed in a world of intricate customs, where every gesture carried meaning and every word held weight. The Queen, now bound to him by her own declaration, guided him through these rites with a patience that belied her earlier intensity. She explained the significance of each ritual, her voice soft yet firm as she wove tales of her people's history and beliefs. It was during these moments that Elias began to glimpse the depth of her character, the wisdom that tempered her power, the compassion that softened her authority. Yet, the transition was not without its challenges. The courtiers, though outwardly respectful, watched him with wary eyes, their glowing gazes betraying a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Whispers followed him wherever he went, their hushed tones carrying questions about the nature of his bond with the Queen. Some viewed him as an outsider intruding upon sacred traditions, while others saw him as a symbol of hope, a bridge between worlds. The tension was palpable, a delicate balance that required constant vigilance. Amidst the whirlwind of change, Elias and the Queen found fleeting moments of solitude. In the quiet of her private chambers, surrounded by the soft glow of bioluminescent flora, they spoke of their respective worlds. She shared stories of Lyria's celestial wonders, of moons that sang in oceans that shimmered with stardust. In turn, Elias recounted tales of Earth's blue skies and rolling oceans, of humanity's struggles and triumphs. These conversations forged a tentative connection, a fragile thread of understanding that grew stronger with each passing day. But it was in the unspoken moments that their bond truly deepened. When their eyes met across a crowded hall or when her hand brushed against his in a gesture both deliberate and fleeting, Elias felt a pull he could not deny. It was not just attraction, it was something more profound, a recognition of kindred spirits navigating the complexities of their intertwined destinies. The Queen, too, seemed to sense this growing connection. Her initial aloofness gave way to moments of vulnerability, her guarded expressions softening into smiles that lit up the room. Still, the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. The political implications of their union loomed large, casting shadows over their burgeoning relationship. Advisors whispered warnings in hushed tones, urging caution and restraint. Allies of the Queen questioned her judgment, while factions within the court plotted against the human interloper. Yet through it all, Elias and the queen stood side by side, their resolve unwavering. Together, they faced the challenges head-on, their bond strengthening with each trial they overcame. As weeks turned into months, Elias found himself increasingly drawn into the intricacies of Lyrian governance. The queen introduced him to councils and assemblies, where debates raged over policies that would shape the future of their alliance. His presence sparked heated discussions, with some arguing that his involvement undermined Lyrian sovereignty, while others championed the potential benefits of collaboration. The queen navigated these turbulent waters with practiced ease, her diplomatic prowess evident in every decision she made. Yet Elias noticed the toll it took on her, the subtle furrowing of her brow, the fleeting shadows that passed over her luminous eyes. Their nights were often spent in quiet reflection, the weight of their responsibilities pressing down upon them. In the sanctuary of her chambers, they spoke candidly about the challenges they faced. "Change is never easy," she admitted one evening, her voice tinged with weariness. "Even when it is necessary." Elias nodded, understanding the burden she carried. He offered what support he could, sharing insights from his own experiences as a leader. Together, they crafted strategies to address dissent and foster unity, their combined efforts yielding gradual progress. Yet, amidst the turmoil, there were moments of unexpected joy. The queen revealed hidden facets of her personality, her love for music, her fascination with astronomy, her playful sense of humor. These glimpses of her true self endeared her to Elias even more, deepening the connection they shared. They explored Lyria together, venturing beyond the palace to witness its wonders firsthand. From crystalline forests that hummed with life to rivers that flowed with liquid light, each discovery brought them closer, forging memories that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. Their bond continued to evolve, growing richer and more complex with each passing day. It was no longer just a union of necessity but a partnership built on mutual respect and admiration. The queen confided in Elias, sharing fears and dreams she had kept hidden from others. In turn, he opened up about his own vulnerabilities, revealing the doubts and insecurities that had haunted him throughout his life. These exchanges created a foundation of trust, a safe haven amidst the storms they faced. However, the specter of opposition loomed ever-present. Rumors of rebellion began to surface, whispers of factions plotting to undermine the alliance and restore Lyria to its former isolation. The queen dismissed these threats with characteristic poise, but Elias sensed her unease. He vowed to stand by her side, no matter the cost, knowing that their journey was far from over. Together, they prepared for the battles ahead, their hearts united in purpose even as the winds of change threatened to tear them apart. As tensions simmered beneath the surface of Lyrian society, Elias and the queen found themselves increasingly isolated within the palace walls. Advisors who had once been staunch supporters began to distance themselves, their loyalty wavering under pressure from dissenting factions. Even members of the queen's inner circle whispered behind closed doors, questioning whether her bond with the human was a strength or a liability. The air grew heavy with suspicion, and the once vibrant halls of the palace now echoed with muted footsteps and guarded glances. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the throne room in shades of deep indigo and gold, a messenger arrived bearing troubling news. A group of influential nobles had convened secretly, drafting a petition demanding the dissolution of the alliance. Their arguments centered on fears of cultural dilution and the perceived threat Elias posed to Lyrian sovereignty. The document bore signatures that carried significant weight, including those of high-ranking military officers and prominent scholars. The queen listened in silence, her expression unreadable as the messenger relayed the details. When the report concluded, she dismissed the messenger with a wave of her hand, then turned to Elias. Her luminous eyes burned with a quiet fury, though her voice remained calm. "They fear what they do not understand," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "But they forget that fear breeds stagnation, and stagnation leads to decay." Elias nodded, though he couldn't ignore the knot tightening in his stomach. He had faced resistance before, but this was different. This was a direct challenge to the very foundation of their bond. That night, as they retreated to her chambers, the queen paced restlessly, her shimmering gown trailing behind her like a comet's tail. "I will not yield to their cowardice," she declared, her voice rising with each word. "If they wish to test my resolve, let them try. Let them see what happens when they cross the Queen of Lyria." Elias watched her, torn between admiration for her determination and concern for the consequences of defiance. He knew the stakes were higher than ever, not just for them but for the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. The following morning, the palace buzzed with activity as preparations began for an emergency assembly. Nobles, counselors, and military leaders gathered in the grand hall, their glowing eyes reflecting a spectrum of emotions: anger, fear, defiance. The queen entered last, her presence commanding immediate silence. She ascended the dais, her posture regal and unyielding, and addressed the assembly with a voice that resonated like thunder. "You question my judgment," she began, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. "You doubt my ability to lead. But know this, I chose this path not out of weakness, but out of strength. To abandon it now would be to betray everything we stand for." Her speech ignited a firestorm of debate, voices rising in protest and support alike. Amidst the chaos, Elias stood at her side, a silent pillar of solidarity. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but as he met the queen's resolute gaze, he felt a surge of determination. Together, they would face whatever storms lay ahead, their bond unshaken by the winds of adversity. The assembly hall crackled with energy, the air thick with the weight of unspoken fears and simmering ambitions. The queen's declaration hung in the space between them, a challenge that dared anyone to step forward and contest her authority. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the faint hum of bioluminescent lights pulsing along the walls. Then, one by one, voices began to rise, some in fervent agreement, others in vehement opposition. A tall nobleman with eyes like molten silver stepped forward, his armor gleaming faintly as he addressed the queen. "Your Majesty," he began, his tone measured but laced with accusation, "we do not question your strength or your wisdom. But this union with an outsider, it risks unraveling centuries of tradition. What assurance do we have that this human will not exploit our trust? That he will not bring ruin upon us all?" The room erupted into murmurs of approval, the sentiment clearly shared by many. Elias felt the heat of their gazes boring into him, each pair of glowing eyes carrying its own judgment. He clenched his fists at his sides, resisting the urge to defend himself. This was not his place. Not yet. It was the queen who held the floor, and it was she who must answer for them both. The queen descended from the dais, her movements deliberate and commanding. She stopped mere inches from the nobleman, her luminous gaze locking onto his with an intensity that silenced the room once more. "You speak of tradition," she said, her voice low and resonant, "but tradition is not immutable. It evolves, just as we must evolve if we are to survive. Do you think I made this choice lightly? Do you believe I would risk my people's future on a whim?" Her words carried the weight of conviction, each syllable striking like a hammer against stone. The nobleman faltered, his composure wavering under her scrutiny. "But your Majesty," another voice interjected, a woman clad in flowing robes adorned with intricate patterns that shifted like liquid light, "the humans are unpredictable. Their history is rife with conflict, division, and destruction. How can we trust that they will honor the bond you have forged?" Elias tensed, the accusation stinging despite its truth. Humanity's past was far from pristine, and he knew better than most the scars it had left behind. Yet, he also knew the potential for growth, for redemption. Before he could stop himself, he stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're right," he admitted, his tone steady though his heart raced. "My people have made mistakes, terrible ones. But we've also learned from them. We've rebuilt, adapted, and sought to become something better. That's why I'm here, to bridge the gap between our worlds, not widen it." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him now. The queen glanced at him briefly, her expression unreadable, before addressing the assembly once more. "This man stands before you not as a conqueror, but as a partner. Together, we can forge a new path, one that honors the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. If you cannot see that, then perhaps it is not Elias you doubt, but me." Her words sent a ripple through the crowd, some nodding in agreement while others exchanged uneasy glances. The dissenters were not swayed entirely, but the tide had shifted slightly. Elias felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on his shoulders. He was no longer merely an observer in this drama. He was a participant, bound irrevocably to the fate of two worlds. In the days that followed, the political landscape grew increasingly volatile. Supporters of the alliance rallied around the Queen, organizing public demonstrations and petitions to counter the growing tide of opposition. Meanwhile, those who opposed the union became bolder, their rhetoric sharpening into outright hostility. Rumors spread of secret meetings held under the cover of darkness, whispers of plots to remove the Queen from power and sever ties with humanity altogether. Elias found himself thrust into the role of diplomat once more, working tirelessly alongside the Queen to quell unrest and build bridges where none seemed possible. They traveled together across Lyria, visiting cities and villages to meet with local leaders and citizens. In every corner of the planet, they encountered a spectrum of reactions. Some welcomed them with open arms, eager to embrace change, while others met them with suspicion and disdain. Through it all, the Queen remained steadfast, her resolve unwavering even as the challenges mounted. Yet Elias noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. There were moments when her usual poise gave way to flashes of exhaustion, her luminous eyes dimming ever so slightly. He saw the toll the conflict was taking on her, the burden of leadership pressing down upon her slender frame. And yet, she never faltered, never wavered in her commitment to their shared vision. One evening, as they rested in a secluded garden beneath a canopy of crystalline trees, Elias finally voiced the concern that had been gnawing at him for days. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the surrounding flora. "Whatever happens next, I'm with you. Always." The Queen turned to him, her expression softening as she reached out to take his hand. "I know," she replied, her voice tinged with gratitude. "And that is why I chose you, Elias Drake. Not because you are perfect, but because you understand imperfection, and the courage it takes to rise above it." Their fingers intertwined, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. In that moment, amidst the fragility of their circumstances, they found solace in each other's presence. Whatever storms lay ahead, they would face them together, as equals, as partners, and as something far greater than either had imagined possible. Yet, even as their bond deepened, the shadows of uncertainty loomed larger. Somewhere in the depths of Lyria, forces were gathering, forces that would test not only their resolve but the very fabric of their worlds. And though neither could foresee what awaited them, they knew one thing for certain. The choices they made in the days to come would echo through the ages, shaping destinies beyond their comprehension. As the days turned into weeks, the tension on Lyria reached a breaking point. A faction of rebels, emboldened by dissent, launched a daring attack on the palace, seeking to overthrow the Queen and sever ties with humanity. Chaos erupted, but Elias stood firm beside her, his presence a testament to their unshakable bond. Together, they rallied loyalists, quelling the uprising with a combination of diplomacy and decisive action. In the aftermath, the Queen addressed her people, her voice resonating with both authority and compassion. "Change is painful," she declared, "but it is also necessary for growth. We will not turn back." Her words ignited a renewed sense of unity among her subjects, many of whom began to see the alliance not as a threat, but as an opportunity. Elias and the Queen emerged stronger, their connection forged in the crucible of adversity. Though challenges remained, they faced them together, their bond a beacon of hope for two worlds learning to coexist. And as the twin suns rose over Lyria once more, casting their light upon a planet poised on the brink of transformation, the future seemed limitless, a tapestry woven from courage, trust, and the enduring power of understanding.